Well, hello guys. It is Sunday again, and we're here at the Pandemic Pinup Happy Hour. Today we're doing tea-based cocktails, which I'm super excited about. Last year, I did a class also, another one on the same theme, just because I thought tea just isn't used often enough in cocktails, I feel. So I decided to revisit it and make some new great tea cocktails, at least in my opinion. Obviously, this is just my personal opinion, mildly professional. I kind of do this for a living. However, I wanted to share this with you. So today's class is called Spill the Tea, mainly because that's just a phrase people say, and I always find it entertaining because when they say it, I literally think of tea, not gossip, which is what I'm fairly certain it's supposed to be. So for our drinks today, we'll be using tea in a couple different ways. We'll be using some different spirits. Quick reminder, if you are following along after this is already aired and you have any questions, something I didn't explain well while I was teaching, please feel free to reach out. You can contact me through my Instagram account at Pandemic Pinup, or you can reach out through the Underground Cooking Club page where this streams live. There's lots of ways to get in touch with me on social media because my life is chaotic and so is my social media approach. So for our first cocktail today, I am going to make one of my absolute favorite cocktails that I actually developed last year, but didn't actually make it a part of the tea class. So we're going to be making something I called for Fashion's sake, or for Fashion's sake. It's a very, very heavy play on words. Fashion spelled Fassion, to pay homage to the fashionalist syrup that I use for this cocktail. It is a hibiscus strawberry syrup that a company named Cocktail and Sons makes out in Louisiana, and it is amazing. That is like the understatement of the decade. What I will tell you though is if you want to explore this cocktail, you want to get your hands on this syrup, apparently it goes really fast. I happen to know somebody that can get me some. But if you don't know or you're not in the know, then you should definitely make sure you're always checking back on their webpage because I know it's like as soon as it's available, it's gone. So we're going to be using that and then sake / sake because we are also using a sake in this cocktail. Now, that being said, sake is a very beautiful spirit. There's lots of different kinds. A couple weeks ago, I did a class on sake. So if you are into that spirit, hop on back and check that one out. But today I'm not using any flavored sakes. I did use two from Taiku, which is a brand that's commercially available in most of the United States last time that I did sake. But I also used a Junmai sake, which is probably my favorite kind of sake. Today I'm using a cloudy Nigori sake. You can use any sake you like or have access to or you have on hand. I like this cocktail with Junmai and I like it with cloudy. It's a matcha-based tea cocktail. So I'm going to teach you guys how to do this. It's going to seem kind of involved, but I promise you, worth it. So for this cocktail, guys, what we're going to do is we have a 3/4 teaspoon of matcha powder. Now it is culinary grade. I get this really awesome brand called Bacha because their logo is a sheep. And I've tried a couple different matchas. I really like this one. I'm not endorsed by anybody. I just get asked a lot what brands I use so that you can get the exact same flavor profile if you're replicating this at home. If that's not your brand, feel free to use something else. But this one's really, really nice. I find it dissolves really well. And the flavor is absolutely what it should be, right on the nose. So it's a 3/4 teaspoon of this. If you're unfamiliar with that brand, I will be sure to post a photo of the bag that I buy and where I get it if y'all would like to have that information. I'll put it up on the Instagram account. So to that 3/4 teaspoon, I'm going to add 1 ounce of hot water. And that's just because I have found that matcha tends to dissolve a little easier with hot water. So I have this nifty little latte wand, but you can use just a spoon, a small whisk. You could do anything really. You could use a chopstick, I think is what I did the first time I made it. And you just want to stir it around in the hot water to dissolve it. I use this because it makes it faster. And then it also makes it extra foamy. So this ends up being like this really nice, lightly boozy matcha tea latte. So I don't know about y'all, but I tried the matcha tea latte at Starbucks when it came out, and it is my jam. So I very quickly realized that if I didn't want to go broke, I had to learn to make one myself. And then I got bored and added some alcohol to it. And it turned out pretty tasty. So it was like a few seconds. It's all frothy and dissolves beautifully in there. So now, the other ingredients that we're going to add to this is the Fassion. So we're going to add a 3/4 ounce of that. So we're going to pour that right into our shaker. And now, like I mentioned, this is kind of inspired by the matcha tea lattes. So it does have milk. That being said, I'm using whole milk. That's what I consume at home. It's my preferred presentation, I guess, of milk. But you could do this with the coconut milk. You can do it with almond milk, any of the alternative milks. And if you're into actual dairy, like cow milk, then you could also use a 2% or a skim if that's what you actually have at home. I went for the whole milk because when I tried it with cream, it was too thick, too heavy. But then when I tried it with the skim, I thought it was kind of a little watery. So for me, if I was going to use anything, I would use either the whole milk, like I'm going to do now, or you could use coconut milk because it has a really nice amount of like a fatty kind of content and it's like mouthfeel. So it kind of replicates it, but you will get a much more present coconut flavor if you do that, which I'm not mad about. So if you like coconut, go for it. So we're going to be using 4 ounces. 4 ounces of that. That's 2. Put this in our shaker. And this is a lot of liquid. So just keep that in mind. If you have a really tiny shaker, you might want to use something else, something like a mason jar. And now we add the booze. So we're going to add 1 1/4 ounces. I'm going to shake this up because, like I said, it's a little bit cloudy. This is a cloudy sake. So I tried this with a couple different ratios, and I will say that if you are making this and you want to use more alcohol, it kind of depends because it is dairy, and sake tends to be lower proof, so it will work, but you do need to be careful. So just start off small if you're going to start adding. And as I am pouring this 1 1/4 ounces of sake, it is dawning on me that I've completely forgotten to get my ice. So we're going to pretend that we're taking a quick TV commercial break. I'm going to go run and get my ice, and then you're going to hear some loud sounds off screen, and then I'll be right back. Okay, don't go anywhere. Now you also get to see how tall my bar is and how short I am. So hi, welcome back to the class. We have finished our commercial break. We have gotten ice. You would think that that would be something that I think immediately, but apparently not. So we're going to add ice to our shaker. I have to go back and count, but I think I've forgotten ice 3 times on this show. I think so. So with all those constants in there, because it is so hefty, you definitely want to make sure that there's a lot of seal. Said that incorrectly. You want to make sure that your shaker is very tightly sealed so that when you do shake it, it doesn't paint the wall. So we're going to shake it for about 10 to 15 seconds. Okay. Beautiful. Oh gosh, it's so gorgeous. Now you could serve this in any kind of glass. You could do a coffee mug. You could do a tall pint glass if you're into that. I have a really neat little teacup that I actually drink my matcha in. So I am going to pour it in there. So you could dirty dump this and keep the ice if you plan to drink it kind of quickly, mainly because that ice will continue to dilute. So if you don't want to water down, then you would want to strain it up like I'm doing now. So I'm going to strain it like this. It's going to have a light amount of foam on the top, nothing crazy. It will have a little more if you use something heavier, like a cream. Beautiful. All right. Now, as far as the garnish, I thought about it long and hard, and I'm going to be very honest, it doesn't really need one. Also, I don't really think of garnishes when I think of a matcha latte or any kind of like coffee thing, unless you're really into whipped cream, which is absolutely not my jam, but you could totally do something like that with this. Whipped cream, a little extra sprinkle of the matcha if you really want to. but I wanted something to contrast the color because it's this beautiful pale green and it's got that gorgeous Fasciola syrup in it that is so very deep red. So I have some lightly hydrated hibiscus leaves, flowers. I just soak these in water just long enough to make them kind of pliable. So hot water, about 3 minutes maybe. And then I'm gonna put those on my little cocktail skewer and they look like really neat. They look kind of like a flame. Then I'm gonna just set that in the glass. And that is for Fashion's. It's so good. Oh my gosh, this is just as good as last time as I remember. Oh my gosh, it's delicious. Okay, I'm gonna put that down because I'm going to get very easily distracted. That is chef kiss. Delicious. Try one and then reach out to me. Let me know what you think. It's phenomenal. Okay, that being made, we are going to move on to our second cocktail. And now this one is a bit interesting. So I'm calling this cocktail Come Again because the tea that's being used in this cocktail has a name that every time you say it, if someone doesn't know what it is or hasn't heard of it, they say weird things like, I'm sorry, what? Or excuse you? Or come again? So I just named the cocktail. So the tea that I'm using, let me see if I can get this right. I always have to read it out loud, is lapsang souchong. So it is a tea that is dried by smoking the tea leaves. So when you open that tea bag, it smells like a campfire. It is really smoky. Now, some people aren't into smoky spirits, smoky drinks. For me, it's kind of hit or miss. I like some mezcals, not all of them. I'm not huge on peaty scotch. And as far as my whiskeys go, smoked is not necessarily my first choice. But I do enjoy being able to add it in ways that I prefer. So you have things like a smoked old fashioned. You can smoke a glass that you put any cocktail in. But I wanted to add in a smoky element that was a little more subtle and fully incorporated into the drink. So we're basically making kind of a whiskey sour with this tea. So what we're going to do is take our cocktail shaker and a jigger. I'm gonna get my life together, guys. I know I look really flustered today, as you can tell. I've got a lot going on here for you guys. Trying to remember everything I'm doing. So I have brewed the lapsang souchong ahead of time, so now it's cooled. So I need 1.5 ounces of that. And with it being a really strong aromatic tea, I wouldn't necessarily recommend brewing this at double strength. Sometimes when I brew teas for cocktails, I really want those notes of depth to come through. But because tea is really delicate, sometimes it gets lost in the drink. So one of the tricks I use is to, I guess, double steep, or I do basically half the amount of water that you would need for the actual tea bag if you were just drinking it. This one I brewed the regular way. So 1.5 ounces of that. And then I'll be using 1.5 ounces of my bourbon. Today's selection is 9 Banded out of Austin, Texas. I love whiskey. I have a lot of different whiskeys. And because I'm not sponsored, I get to use any whiskey I want. This is one I like. As you can tell, a lot of it is almost gone. But yeah, I also love supporting local when possible, as long as it's good and fresh and delicious. So 1.5 ounces of that. Pour it right into our cocktail shaker. And then I'm going to use some lemon juice. Again, we are making a riff on a whiskey sour, so we're going to need some kind of citrus note or something tart. And then I'm going to use just a regular simple syrup. It's going to be 1/2 ounce of that. All right. And then we're going to do some orange bitters, 2 intentional dashes. And what I mean by intentional, this was my little shaker bottle, and you're just like, why? Like, just do it like you mean it every time. That's how you get a good dash, because then you don't know if you're using the actual amount that should be coming out of the dropper. So 1, 2, make it intentional, guys. Dash with intent. All right, now that that's in there, let's talk about egg white cocktails or sours with egg whites. I love egg white cocktails. I'm not ashamed about it. I will preach it to the high heavens. They're amazing. The mouthfeel is great. The egg white traps a lot of really delicate aromas. So when you go to smell your cocktail, it's just really beautiful, almost like lightly perfumed. I love froth, so I love it on my coffees. I love it on teas. I love it in a lot of different things. I like froth, so it's a great texture. Now, it is absolutely safe as long as your eggs come from a safe place. you know where they come from, then you can feel absolutely secure in using eggs in your cocktail. Our next cocktail after this has an egg yolk. But egg whites in a cocktail usually mean that it's a fizz or something like that, or sour. So if you don't want to use egg whites because they either freak you out or maybe you are not a person that consumes eggs, you can use something called aqua fava. So aquafaba is the liquid in the can of chickpeas. Whenever you get those and you like strain it off so you can use the chickpeas in hummus or salads or whatever you want to make with it, that liquid can be used in the exact same amount as an egg white. So if you use 1 ounce of egg white, 1 ounce of aquafaba for your cocktail, and it will foam up just the same. Now, that being said, personally for me, the aquafaba carries a certain amount of like a metallic-y kind of taste to it. It's very subtle, but it's still there. And it just has a little bit of a funky smell to it, and not in an unapproachable way. It's just, it smells slightly like beans. It's in a can with a bunch of chickpeas. So it's a very popular version or ingredient for people who do vegan diets or try to not eat as many eggs and things like that. So you have options. And if you don't like any of those options, don't put it in there. It's your cocktail. I'm not there to judge you. I'm just here to give you guidelines and tell you what I like and the why. And you can agree or not agree, and we can do that over some drinks. So I'm going to be putting an egg white in this cocktail. I'm going to have that here. I'm going to put it directly into my shaker, very carefully separating this yolk. Now, there's also a very large amount of debate about how to shake egg white cocktails. Some people like to dry shake, which is my preferred method, where you shake the cocktail as is with no ice, and then you open your shaker, add ice, and shake it again. That helps the protein strands in the egg white separate properly, aerate properly, and get really nice and fluffy and reform tightly to create a really nice head on your cocktail. There is an argument for reverse dry shaking, where you shake it with ice, strain it, so that the ice is now removed, and then shake it again without the ice to dry. So it's exactly the opposite of what I said the first time. Now, I've done a lot of tests. The difference is so minimal to me that I can't justify all the extra dishes or all the extra work. So I just do the dry shake. So you can watch. So tightly secure your shaker. We're going to shake, and it's going to be about 15 to 20 seconds, give or take. Sometimes it's only 10. It kind of depends on your shaker and how you shake. You're going to start to feel towards the end of that of the 15 seconds, give or take, that the egg whites are expanding. They're getting a lot of air, so you're going to feel a lot of pressure building up in your shaker, and that's okay. If you feel that, you can stop shaking. Should be nice and frothy. We're going to add a little ice. And we're going to shake it again. All right. All right, so for this cocktail, I have chosen a coupe, which is a fancy little stemmed glass. You can absolutely put this in any other glassware that you like. So I have this lovely coupe here, and I'm going to slowly strain the cocktail into my glass. Now, one of the tricks about cocktails that have egg whites, egg yolks, dairy, things that end up frothing up or get a lot of body, they have something that we call head, right? Which is the foam, kind of like on beer. So if you're wanting to garnish those beverages, you need to give it a few seconds so that the foam can settle. That way it's not as soft of a cloud and it's a little bit more firm, so it'll hold the weight of whatever your garnish is. Now, if your garnish is really light, like grated chocolate or zested orange peel, then you can go ahead and garnish immediately. But as you can see, hopefully there's a little bit of a color change starting to happen right here, is where that foam line is starting to separate really nicely. So once you have a foam line, then you can go ahead and garnish. If your garnish is something a little heavier, like an orange peel or maybe a piece of fruit, I like to tell everyone, if you've never done a cocktail that has those ingredients in it before, strain it into your glass, count to 10 in your head, and then you can garnish it. It's been at least 10 with me talking all this crazy. So I have some loose leaf tea, and I'm going to just put a little bit in the middle. A light sprinkling. Almost looks like I sprinkled it with pepper. All right. So guys, that is, can I get, oh, it smells so good. So you would think it would smell a lot smokier, but the smoke becomes less of an aroma and more of a back note on the flavor. Mm. Mm-hmm. And I will say, when you make this cocktail, you definitely want to pick a bourbon that is a little bit higher proof than your standard 40, just because it will stand up better to the complexity of this tea. If you do something that's just a normal 40%, it'll work. It just won't be as bold and strong in the sense of the flavor profile, not alcohol-wise. But that is a delicious cocktail. We have one more to go. So our last spill the cocktail tea, or our spill the tea. You've seen I've had any of these drinks. My brain just runs a lot faster than my mouth sometimes. So this is something I like to call the sparkling Pina. So I'm going to be using two really cool ingredients that I was able to procure. One is this Texas-based Pina Loca tequila. I am not a big flavored anything fan of vodka, rum, tequilas. You can keep most of your flavors. I'm not here for most of them. Most of the time, because they don't taste good, they taste very artificial or wildly sweet. There's a few brands out there that I do like that have flavored things. Now, granted, that's just my personal palate. If you're super into like coconut rum and jalapeno tequila and all those crazy things, go for it. But 9 times out of 10, I'll just infuse it myself so I can get the flavor profile that I want and it tastes brighter and fresher. But then there's this. It's delicious. So the Pina Loca tequila is not overly sweet. The proof on it is 34.5, so it's actually pretty nice. It's got a good backbone. And the pineapple is kind of like roasted when they make it into this, like, so it gets like caramelized flavor. So the smell on it is so great. And then it tastes kind of like roasted pineapples, but in a good way. It still tastes really fresh. And the logo is super cool. So that's the tequila I'm using. And then I have these cool sparkling botanical teas. This company sponsored a really cool bartender project that I did about 2 months ago to give a little bit of relief and distraction to bartenders still affected by COVID who were still unemployed. And we were very, very grateful that they did that for us, but they sent us some samplers and they're super tasty. I'm not using them here because they sent them to me. I'm using them because they're delicious and they pair well, or this one pairs really well with this tequila. And I'm realizing that this class seems highly sponsored. I need to find better ways to phrase what I'm saying. I just like to share the things that I'm using, guys. I swear. I don't get paid to do this. If y'all want to tip me, I do accept virtual tips, but I do this to stay sane and to give y'all something to watch. So for this cocktail, the sparkling Pina, we're going to need a cocktail shaker again. And we are going to use a 1/2 ounce of lime. And then in the preparations for this week, every week before the class, I usually put out a list of what things you need to shop for and what preparations you need to make ahead of time in case you want to follow along. So if you're watching this later and you don't have access to the list or can't find it, just hit me up and I'll send it to you. So I'm going to use a 1/4 ounce of this cayenne black tea syrup. Now, when I was making this for this particular batch, I used an Earl Grey. You could use any black tea, and the cayenne is very much to taste. For the ratio that I posted, it was a 1/4 cup of sugar, a 1/4 cup of water, 1 tea bag, and anywhere between 1/8 of a teaspoon to a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. So you can kind of play with those ratios to see what you like, what pairs better with your tea. I did 1/8 of a teaspoon, and it was perfect. It wasn't too hot, but it was still had a nice little kind of kick in the back. So I've got my lime and I've got my syrup. We're going to use 2 ounces of the good stuff. 2 ounces of that Pina Loca, which if you don't know, means crazy pineapple. I almost named this cocktail Sparkling Crazy, but then it seemed kind of confusing. So I just went with Sparkling Pina. So we have that, and then we are going to add 2 controversial, well, not controversial ingredients. We're going to add 2 ingredients that kind of can be a little either off-putting or intimidating when in a cocktail. One of them is cream. And the reason that can be off-putting or intimidating is because it will thicken your cocktail, make it nice and creamy. Some people aren't into that. I like it. I think it makes cocktails feel more like a dessert experience. But it can also curdle if you have high amounts of alcohol in your cocktail. So you have to really know how to balance it out with the sweetener that you're adding, the proof of your cocktail. So if you follow this recipe with any other tequila, you do need to make sure that the proof is the same or lower. And then the other ingredient we're using is that little leftover egg yolk. So I see a lot of people make egg white cocktails, and a friend of mine, it is her pet peeve to watch people make a pet peeve cocktail and then just toss that egg yolk. So I'm here to tell you, don't toss your egg yolks. You can use it for your hair. You can make a beauty mask for it. You can cure them and scrape them all over everything. It's delicious. That's my little chef hack. I love cured egg yolks. You could make a carbonara if you just make a ton of sour cocktails. I've done that repeatedly. Or actually, I've had someone make it for me. I haven't made it. I've had someone make me carbonara with my leftover yolks. But you can also use them in cocktails. You can use them in a style of cocktail called a flip. So fizzes and sours, egg whites. Flips can be whole egg or egg yolk. And what it does is it makes it kind of velvety. And to me, velvety and creamy are different. Velvety is just kind of like unctuous, kind of just like rich, whereas creamy is just creamy. Now, to you, they may mean the same thing, but maybe if you try this cocktail, you'll see what I'm trying to put into words and not doing very well today. So with that being said, we have the lime juice, the syrup, the pineapple, tequila, adding the egg yolk. And I just have this weird pet peeve. I've been over this on the show. If I'm adding dairy to a cocktail, I always ice it first. It's just a force of habit. So I'm going to go ahead and add ice. And then I have my cream. It's heavy whipping cream. And I'm going to use a 3/4 ounce. Put that in there. And then we're going to shake this bad boy. So you want to take about 10 to 15 seconds. Everything gets really nice and creamy and incorporated. Then I'm going to open the shaker. And when you add a carbonated ingredient to a cocktail, you have a few choices. You can top off, which means you just pour it on top of your cocktail once you've already poured it into your glass. I don't mind that method, but depending on the style of cocktail, particularly if there's ice in it, usually that carbonation floats on top. And then that first sip you have, all soda, all Sprite, all Coke, none of the actual cocktail. And then later you get the cocktail. So I prefer to stir those. But in something like this that I'm going to be serving up without ice into this gorgeous vintage coupe, I like to pour my tea or my sparkling anything, my sparkling botanical in this case, or my mixer, my carbonated beverage into the shaker because it's getting mixed in as I pour it in. And then when I pour it in my glass, it gets mixed out. And so it all comes together really nicely without having to do any crazy extra work. So I recommend about 1.5 ounces, and I'm using the dandelion ginger sparkling botanical tea. They have a ton of different flavors, and I'm sure there's a lot of sparkling teas out there. You could use any of them. You could also just swap this out for a club soda or a Sprite or something like that. So I'm going to pour that in there. You can do 1.5 ounces to 2 ounces. And I'm going to double strain this cocktail so that it is really nice and smooth and velvety. So that means I have my hawthorn strainer in here, my finest strainer here. Pour this to collect any little ice chips that might escape. And I very, very rarely use ingredients to garnish that are not in the cocktail. It's not a thing I like doing. It's kind of actually a pet peeve of mine. As a chef, it bothers me seeing dishes that have maybe parsley on them and there's no parsley in the dish. It is so upsetting to me. So I don't like usually doing that to cocktails, but in this case, I'm going to make an exception. I do have this orange peel, and the reason I'm making the exception is because I really love this cocktail being tied together with the smell of this orange oil. So I'm going to express that over the top, and then I'm going to just keep it as the garnish. And I happen to have a really amazing friend that sent me these super cool cocktail skewers that are all skulls wearing different things. And one of them happens to be wearing sunglasses, just like a pineapple on this tequila. So it made me super excited to use this cocktail pick for this tequila cocktail. So I'm going to skewer that. And then just like so, it doesn't fall. All right, there you go. And that, guys, is the sparkling Pina. Oh, I don't even know. Oh, the best way I can describe this is like a really refreshing pineapple version of an orange creamsicle, but without it being that sweet. The tea really, really does some beautiful things in here. And I'm combining a bunch of different teas, right? So this sparkling tea, they have a really interesting blend of things. So this sparkling tea has ginger, lemon, dandelion root, black lemon, kuro koji fermented green tea, rosemary, tangerine, chili peppers, and essential oils from lemon and ginger. So that tea's in there. And then there's the Earl Grey and my cayenne simple syrup that's in there. And it's just, oh my gosh, that is chef kisses for all the cocktails today. They're delicious. I'm gonna toot my own horn because they're super tasty. I'm not even shy about it. But yeah, those are my cocktails for you guys today. I'm super excited about next week. The class name is Suck on this, spelled S-U-C-C, because I'm going to be using succulents in cocktails. Before you like freak out, they are fully edible succulents. We'll be using aloe, cacti, also known as nopales, and then we'll be using some dragon fruit, which is or prickly pear, which is from, well, no, they're not the same, sorry. Dragon fruit, not prickly pear, from a cactus. So we'll be using those in cocktails. It's going to be super exciting. A lot of the cocktails are really, really refreshing and bright. Perfect for summer. So I don't know about y'all, but it's starting to heat up in Texas. Today was 85 degrees and I'm loving it. And I know in about 2 weeks, it's going to start trying to hit 3 digits. And I want some refreshing cocktails in my back pocket so I can sit in my kiddie pool and have me a beverage. But before I let you guys go, just remember I post videos pretty much daily, most of the time Monday to Saturday, on my TikTok account. If you need more recipes or more of my craziness, that's at Pandemic Pinup, just like the Instagram account. My new studio will soon be ready, so there will be videos of all the things that are going on, so you guys can see that kind of come together. It's super exciting. And then we just have a bunch of new cocktails coming up that I'm just really excited to share with you. If you would ever like to reach out and send some virtual tips my way and add them to my tip jar, it's appreciated. It helps fund my educational desire / drinking habits at home. But I do. I have Venmo and Cash App and Zelle and all of the PayPal, like all of the things, because I'm here to take tips if you want to give them to me. And if you don't, that's totally fine. You're absolutely more than welcome to be on here for free and use all of these drinks to make your week better. But thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And I will see you all